Welcome back, Mando.
Oh, greetings, Bucketheads. Mevar Tagar. Welcome to our 346th Mandolicious episode of Mandovision, and I'm your host, Narguy Tom. Thank you so much for checking out our small independent Star Wars podcast. We are so glad you're here. Reach out to us on the socials at Mando_Vision on X and Insta, Mandovision at Blue Sky, and of course you can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. Bucketheads, we are back to resume the kickoff of Season 4, the final season of Star Wars Rebels. We're here with Heroes of Mandalore Part 2, and I think this episode really sort of steps up. There's a lot of good setup in the first episode, a lot of kind of teasing things out, and as I've mentioned before, it's fun for me to go back and rewatch these because I don't remember a lot of these episodes. I think in the last episode I sort of was just drawing blanks on Bo-Katan's arc, and here it is. This answered all those questions that I couldn't remember the answers to. So a good episode. It sets the groundwork for a lot of our Mandalorian stuff that we get to down the road in the Mandalorian when we meet Din Djarin for the first time. So this episode puts a lot of those things into place. Of course, there's a huge swath of Mandalorian history that we still don't know, that we still don't have answers to. We need those information. We need that information. We need those answers. But will we ever get them? The Star Wars universe can be a fickle, vague, mysterious son of a gun every now and then. More often than not, even. But again, it's nice to tease these things out, and I guess sort of the negative of having new Star Wars content coming out all the time is, in live action, in on the TVs and in movies, is that we can't fill in a lot of those blanks like we could back in the day when there wasn't Star Wars content as far as live action and movies and TV shows and things like that. We had books and comics to fill in the gaps, and role-playing game expansions and parts of video game lore, and that was a fun time, but it's a different world now. And so will we ever get to know the entire complexities of the Mandalorian struggle, especially in the time of the Empire, during the time of the saga? I mean, we have some answers, but I'd like to know more. And that's all I really can ask for. Tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. But as far as that goes, I think we just need to dive into our episode today. We've been focusing exclusively on the episodes, and we're doing like little bonus shows to cover a lot of other Star Wars content that's coming out into the world. And I'm due to drop one of those soon. I'll be honest, over the holidays, I did not get much Star Wars reading done, so I have not read many of the books or the comics at this point. I only kind of know what exists out there in the ether, and we will get to it. Don't worry, friends. Those bonus shows will be back on track soon enough. All right, let's go ahead. Let's get the particulars for this week's episode of our Star Wars Rebels rewatch out of the way. This is Star Wars Rebels Season 4, Episode 2, Heroes of Mandalore, Part 2. Original air date was October 16th, 2017. The episode is, of course, written by Christopher Yost, directed by Saul Ruiz, and we got Stephen Melching doing the story editing. Our plot for the episode: Sabine learns that the devastating weapon the Empire is using against the Mandalorians is derived from her prototype. She has to decide whether to destroy it or use it herself. Our primary cast for the episode: Taylor Gray is Ezra Bridger, Freddie Prinze Jr. is Kanan Jarrus, Tyr Sakar, Sabine Wren, Dave Filoni's Chopper, Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa is Ulrich Wren, Katie Sackhoff is Bo-Katan Kryze, Andrew Kishino is Captain Hart, Kevin McKidd returns as Fen Rao, Lars Mikkelsen is Grand Admiral Thrawn, Dave Fennoy is the Kryze pilot, lead Eldar warrior, and Stormtrooper. Bonnie Watt is the lead rock warrior. Tobias Menzies is Tiber Saxon. Matthias Rajan as Tristan Wren. And Sharmila Devar as Ursa Wren. A big cast for this week's show. As we sort of talked about in that first episode, in that first part, we get to see the weapon that's been hinted at, the construction that Sabine made in her youth when she was at the Imperial Academy, and how it's a weapon that can destroy her people, and it weaponizes Beskar, it weaponizes the Mandalorian armor, the very thing that defines her people and who they are. It uses that heritage against them, and it's. I think when Thrawn is having his holo chat with Tiber Saxon, he really sort of underlines how devastating this weapon is. Not just what it does to the body by using Beskar as a conductor to vaporize the body within the armor, but taking this thing that sort of defines the Mandalorians and being able to use it against them as a weapon. This armor that protects them is now going to kill them. It's an insidious machine. I don't want to throw out any really crazy words here, because Sabine will address this herself through the course of this episode. But it is a big telling episode about Sabine and who she is as a character, and sort of her progression from where she was when we met her in the first episode of season 1 to the point now where other Mandalorians are beginning to follow her, and they see that about her. Again, it's in the episode. Fen Rao and Bo-Katan will have this conversation. Like I said, I think it pays off a lot of the things that have been put into place with Sabine's development, with her arc from her very first appearance to this point. So I do really like this episode. It is a lot of fun. It does move. It moves fast. There are interesting choices made by many of the characters, Tiber Saxon, of course, being one of them. But let's go ahead. Let's get into it. You know what that means. It is time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off.
You're going to have to relocate the covert.
This is the way.
This is the way.
So we open on the battlefield where we find that Sabine's weapon, the prototype she had built when she was at the Imperial Academy, has been used against Mandalorians. And Sabine is there, surveying the scene, sees the Beskar, the charred remains of a Mandalorian warrior, a member of Clan Ren. And obviously she is sad and angry and all the things, because she thinks that her mother and her brother have just been killed by the Empire by her weapon. And it is a lot of Sabine taking on the burden of what she created, and knowing that the Empire will stop at nothing to wipe out her people. And it is a big moment for the character. But they have little time to get into it at the moment, because, well, we find out that Tristan and Ursa are still alive, that Sabine's warning got to them in time, and so they ended up being on the edge of where the ATDT had deployed the weapon itself, which we will learn later on is called the Duchess. And yes, Bo-Katan is not amused by that name. There's a lot of emotions in this episode, particularly when it comes to anger. A lot of anger in these episodes as the Mandalorians all kind of freak out at various times at Sabine for everything. But they don't have a lot of time, because the Empire is there. The Imperial Super Commandos are there to sort of finish the job. Anybody left in the path. And I believe Sabine even says it right off the bat that the weapon's not even at full power yet. It has a very limited range, and so the Empire hasn't quite unlocked its full potential just yet. Now we get into some great combat here, Mandalorian-style combat. There's a lot that happens in this. Okay, they get picked up by a friendly Mandalorian ship, and they're trying to get out of there before the TIE fighters show up to blow them up. And then we get Bo-Katan saying, "Hey, a Mandalorian with a jetpack is a weapon. Let's go!" And they jump out of the ship, her and Ezra, and fight TIE fighters. in air. It's awesome. It's a really cool sequence. We've seen little bits and pieces of stuff like this in the past, but it was really cool. I'm not sure how I feel about Ezra crashing into a TIE fighter and not being killed by such a collision, because it feels like that'd be a quick way to die. But I guess Ezra Bridger is made of sterner stuff than some puny mortal. So again, a great action sequence to get away from the Empire. Check out the sequence; it's a lot of fun. Her Bo-Katan being a total awesome warrior, and ripping open the canopy of TIE fighters, dropping grenades. It's a really great sequence, and it's again showing those Mandalorians just how awesome of warrior people they are. But of course, once they are clear and everyone gets back on the ship, of course, Bo-Katan, it's time to voice her feelings on the matter at hand.
You told us you destroyed it.
I did. The Empire must have rebuilt it.
You're a Mandalorian. Why would you create such an abomination? This is the weapon of a coward.
I was young. It was a challenge, and I was arrogant. But when I realized the Empire tested it and actually planned to use it, I sabotaged the prototype and destroyed the plans. I thought that was the end of it, I swear to you.
And then Ezra says something so foolish that I'm surprised the Mandalorians didn't just like slap him, because he has the audacity to suggest that, well, if the weapon just targets your armor, make some different armor, right? Make some armor that doesn't get affected by it. And that's when it is laid out there for, just full on. That Mandalorian armor is part of their heritage. It's passed on from generation to generation. It's survived many battles. It has history in it. It has the history of their people, of their clan, of their ancestors in that armor. We learned that, yes, Sabine has modified her armor and reforged it a little bit to fit her, but it's 5 generations old. It's seen things. It's been through things. I mean, to ask a Mandalorian to not wear their armor is, come on. It's not a good thing, and it's not going to be something that they go for. It is a proud people, a people of tradition, a people who honor their heritage by wearing the armor of their ancestors. And they let Ezra know that, silly boy, yeah, that's not going to happen. We get back to the base. I assume it's Bo-Katan's base, Bo-Katan's little hideout for the Mandalorian Civil War. And as soon as the other warriors see Sabine, they immediately want to attack her and want to kill her. And Sabine gets a moment to sort of stand up and tell everyone, like, hey, listen, yes, I made this thing. I was wrong. I made a terrible mistake. I was like, as she just told Bo-Katan, she was arrogant and she wanted the challenge of it all. But she's like, I'm going to go stop this. This is my mess. I'm going to go and clean it up. Who's coming with me? And she sort of owns it and takes on the responsibility of ending this thing once and for all. And as we've noticed throughout these first 2 episodes, Bo-Katan sees something in Sabine Wren. And I like this little quiet moment to the side here with Bo and Fenrau.
I'm surprised to see you so swayed by Sabine Wren. You seem to be as impressed with her as I am.
I had my doubts, Rao, but she came back to face her past, and her bold initiative has impressed me. She has become a courageous leader. She reminds me of the best of who we were, and could inspire us to become more than we have been of late. I will not allow her efforts to be wasted.
So, good stuff right there. Now, what happens next? Again, we're seeing the potential of the characters. A lot of good stuff going on. But what we did skip over was Grand Admiral Thrawn and Saxon discussing the weapon that he promised to Thrawn. And Thrawn is very well aware that it's not at full power, that its range is limited. And he sort of scoffs at Saxon for even attempting to pass off that it was not. It's an interesting piece of dialogue between the two, because Thrawn, as Thrawn points out, he's very different Gar Saxon. This is a very different Saxon than who Thrawn has been dealing with before. This one is willing to throw his people under the bus for the name, in the name of power and controlling the people of Mandalore, and buddying up to the Emperor and the Empire. Willing to sacrifice his people to do all these things, and Thrawn sort of notes that level of ambition, and sort of again takes note of, like, what does the rest of your clan think about this? Your willingness to use the Mandalorian heritage against them, and Saxon pulls no punches. He just says, like, this is my way to power. This is how we bring peace to Mandalore, as everyone falls in line beneath the powerful weapon that they're afraid of. Fear, to bring the Mandalorians in line, much like the Emperor's plan to bring fear across the galaxy with the Death Star, just on a smaller scale. But by using their armor against them, by using their heritage against them, and Thrawn points these things out as well. It's an interesting sequence between the two characters. But yes, we find out that the weapon's not at full strength, that Saxon doesn't know how to increase its power or its range, and so he needs Sabine Wren, and Thrawn very astutely points that out. So they sort of bait a trap, in a sense, right? They make it so that Saxon's Star Destroyer, that is parked conveniently next to the city of Sundari, is easily accessible, because he knows that they'll come after the weapon and try to destroy it. So he's luring them in. And listen, if I have one complaint about this battle in the third act of the episode, it's that in my mind, there are way more stormtroopers available on a Star Destroyer than what was shown here. The number of stormtroopers available should have just sheerly overwhelmed the Mandalorians at this point. That said, it is a cool battle. It is a fun battle. I like a lot of the exchange between Saxon and Wren and Bo-Katan, and then you have what's the word I want to use for this character? He's sort of Saxon's lapdog character, but he's the one who tries to be Saxon's conscience in a sense, meaning, like, listen, we're doing all these things for the Empire, but who's to say they won't just turn these things, on us at a certain point? And he brings up a valid point, because clearly this is something that has been done in the past. So I don't think this character has a name, but he doesn't die in the episode. Maybe it's Captain. He might be Captain Hark. Now that I'm looking at the cast, it might be Captain Hark. I'm unclear. I don't remember if they address him by name specifically in the episode. But it doesn't matter, because Saxon shows him, like, you gonna question me, fool? I'm gonna shock you too. So yeah, you're seeing the weapon used at a very, very low level against Bo-Katan and against Sabine, because he's trying to get Sabine to agree to bring the weapon to full power, to increase its range, so that he can achieve his goals, so that he can align himself like the Emperor and become like the Emperor, because the Emperor showed him the path to true power. True megalomaniac stuff going on here with Saxon, and again, while all this is going on, a lot of cool combat is happening between the Mandalorians and against the Imperials. There's chicken walkers running around the hangar. I'm sorry, the ATSTs, and cool stuff going on. And then Sabine, to save their lives, Sabine says she'll do it, right? But we know she's not gonna do it. So she goes up there, reprograms the machine. It had been teased earlier in the episode, like, why couldn't we possibly repurpose this, use it against the Empire? And Sabine was like, oh, she's like, I thought about that, but that's not really the mission right now, Well, she makes it the mission. She goes up there, and instead of bringing the machine to full power to destroy the Mandalorian people, she turns it against the Empire, and it targets their armor. Fun scene it turned against the Imperials. It does get on Ezra, because he has that speeder bike helmet, so he feels the wrath of it too momentarily. And I don't think she's killing the Imperials, because again, they are going to rally, but they get a taste of their own medicine. And Sabine does toy with the idea of killing Tiber Saxon and sort of just ending this whole thing. But Bo-Katan talks her down. Bo-Katan is the voice of reason. And Bo-Katan says, listen, this isn't our way. Look at the history of our people. It's been conflict amongst ourselves for so long. You shouldn't start things off. We can end this Mandalorian civil war, but it doesn't have to be by death. It can be just by unification, by bringing people together. And not wanting to have blood on her hands for, and yes, she talks her down, and they disable the machine, and Tiber Saxon lives, except he's not going to live because the Star Destroyer is going to blow up. So, in the long run, but she talks Sabine down from committing murder, and that's a good thing. It is sort of interesting to note, because it wasn't that long ago that Sabine walked away from murdering Gar Saxon. But this time around, she's not willing to pull her punches. And I think it's because this time around, it's even more personal, because the Empire took her weapon and were using it against her people. And so it was the gravest of insults. And it was something that she thought she had dealt with previously. Again, good combat, good action stuff here. The stuff between Ezra and Tristan's a lot of fun. Of course, we overlooked Ezra, Kanan, and Chopper going into the Star Destroyer and purging the memory banks of anything having to do with the Duchess, and making sure that the system, the weapon, cannot be rebuilt again and used against the Mandalorian people. So, as Sabine destroys the machine, causes a chain reaction, it's going to blow up the Star Destroyer, going to blow up Saxon and any forces that are loyal to him. And we end on something of a high note, as now Sabine presents the opportunity to Bo-Katan to take on the Darksaber once again, to lead her people. And many of the powerful houses who just engaged in this battle are present, and they pledge their support to Bo-Katan Kryze as their new leader. House Vizsla, House Wren, all the houses, all right? House Kryze, obviously, and several other houses of import as well. And now we have a new leader of the Mandalorian people, as we knew would happen eventually, but I didn't remember if it happened in this episode or even in this season. I wasn't sure if it happened I couldn't remember if it happened on screen or not. And again, that's why this rewatch is so fun, because I'm sort of getting the canon back in my head on this show, and I'm digging that. And it's nice to know that here's the moment where Bo-Katan steps up to take the Darksaber on and lead her people. What happens next? Well, I don't know if we go back to Mandalore anymore during the season. We will obviously be finding that out shortly. Or is it not until we find out about Moff Gideon arriving on Mandalore, the Night of 1,000 Tears, and all the dark things that come next for the Mandalorian people? Interesting to note also that it has been stated that the Darksaber can only be won in combat, but another moment of the sword being passed on without that combat. So, is that leadership really earned at this point? And I think that's something we talked about at one point during our Mandalorian watch when those were happening. And the idea of Din just giving the Darksaber to people. But we again, it seems somewhat fluid in the idea of we can just give it to people, though it has to be won in combat. But maybe if it's not won in combat, bad things happen to those rulers. That seems to be what happened with Bo, at least this first time around. We'll see what happens. We'll have to kind of put a pin in that and see if we go back to the Mandalorians at any point during this season. Yeah, I just don't remember. I feel like obviously that not all of Mandalorian business is handled at this point in the show, but I couldn't. There's so much for them to do in season 4, as we have to start wrapping this show up. Stay tuned. That's all I can say about that, and we'll make notes of it all. All right, so this episode's going to get 8 buckets for me. I think it's really, really solid. Good action, good entertainment. Sabine's still learning some lessons that I thought she had maybe learned the first time around when she reunited with her family, but that's okay. Good stuff still. 8 buckets, and we got more Star Wars Rebels to watch very, very soon. All right, my friends, let's wrap this sucker up. Let's get out of here. We're going to be back next week. We have more episodes of Star Wars Rebels to rewatch. And of course, if any Star Wars news breaks, we will be here to talk about it. Go out there, be great Star Wars fans, kind, supportive, respectful, understanding, tolerant. And remember, this is the Mando Vision Podcast. My name is Tom. I am our guy, Tom. And I want to thank you for checking out and supporting our small independent Star Wars show. Reach out to us on the socials, Mando_Vision on X and Insta, Mandovision at Blue Sky, and of course you can email the show at mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. If you're on the Apple Podcast and you can give us a sweet 5-star review, that would be so amazing of you. All right, again, go out there, be great Star Wars fans, and we will be back next week. But remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. You expect me to search the galaxy for the home of this creature and deliver it to a race of enemy sorcerers?
This is the way.
I would like to see the baby.